Imagine a world without the crisp, refreshing taste of a cold beer, or the comforting warmth of a freshly brewed cup of ale. Hard to picture, isn't it? But that's precisely the world that our medieval ancestors inhabited. For them, the process of brewing was not just a way to create a drink. It was an art form, a slow, deliberate dance between human ingenuity and the natural world. This wasn't a quick process. It was a ritual, one that demanded patience and skill. The equipment used in medieval brewing was as simple as it was effective. The basic tools included a large iron pot, a wooden vat, and a strainer made of linen cloth. It was a social lubricant, fostering camaraderie around the table, and it was an elixir of sorts, providing a comforting warmth during the harsh winters of the medieval era. These tools, though rudimentary by today's standards, were chosen for their effectiveness and durability. You are linking arms with the countless brewers who, over the centuries, turned a simple grain and water into a beverage that has echoed through the ages. They were an extension of the brewer's hands, helping to coax the best out of their raw materials. The quality of the ale depended on factors like the type of grain used, the purity of the water, and even the temperature of the air. From the strong ales of northern England to the spiced beers of southern Germany, the ingredients remained largely the same: water, malted barley, hops, and yeast. The magic, however, lay in the subtle variations of these ingredients and the precise control of the brewing process. Each step, from the initial milling of the grain to the final boiling, was a testament to the medieval mindset, a philosophy that valued quality over quantity, care over haste. Picture a typical medieval village. The air is alive with the sounds of hammering, children playing, and the lowing of cattle. In the center, a communal well provides not just water, but a space for gossip and trade. But the well water, while essential, is not safe to drink. Enter ALA, safer, more nourishing, alternative. At the heart of this transformation stood the humble barm, a mixture of water, grain, and yeast, left to ferment over several days. In a world where speed was often the virtue most revered, here was an activity that celebrated the virtues of slowness, attention to detail, and the satisfaction of a job well done. And what about the recipe? It was as diverse as the regions that produced it. So why was ale more than just a drink? It was a necessity, a safeguard against the perils of contaminated water. Now, let's talk about gentle art of medieval brewing in details. Ale was the drink of choice for almost everyone who lived in medieval Europe. Everyone, that is, except those fancy French aristocrats sipping their wine. But why did everyone drink ale? Well, join me and find out. To truly understand the significance of medieval brewing, we must first immerse ourselves in the daily realities of life in that distant era. This crucial step, though its scientific basis was unknown at the time, effectively sterilized the water, making the resulting beverage far safer to consume than untreated water. For this reason, ale became the staple drink for almost everyone, from the humblest peasant to the most powerful lord, from the youngest child to the oldest elder. It was consumed at every meal, throughout the day, and in quantities that would seem astonishing to us today. Brewing was often a household activity, and the sharing of freshly brewed ale fostered a sense of community and camaraderie. Taverns, or alehouses, were vital social hubs, places where news was exchanged, deals were struck, and stories were told. And taverns, raising mugs of ale to quench their thirst and fortify their bodies against the perils of the night. For in a world where darkness brought both rest and danger, a mug of ale was more than just a drink. It was a symbol of resilience, a testament to human ingenuity, and a quiet toast to life in the face of adversity. Unlike the wine-drinking cultures of the Mediterranean, where wine was often reserved for the elite, ale was truly the drink of the common people across much of Northern Europe. If you enjoyed this journey through time, please remember to show your support so that we can keep bringing history to life for you. Until next time, stay curious, stay thirsty, and may your history be as refreshing as a freshly brewed ale. Thanks for watching. Its accessibility meant that it transcended social strata, bringing people together in shared moments of respite and conviviality. A medieval person might consume several liters of ale daily, not for intoxication, but for hydration and sustenance. It was believed to possess medicinal properties, used to treat various ailments, and often consumed by the sick and infirm for its perceived restorative qualities. In monasteries, brewing was not only a means of sustenance but also a spiritual practice, with monks often seen as guardians of brewing knowledge and tradition. The act of brewing was imbued with a sense of purpose, providing for the community and offering a safe, wholesome drink in a world where such things were not always guaranteed. Imagine a world where the most fundamental necessity, clean drinking water, was often a luxury or even a danger. Wine was popular in southern Europe, but was expensive and had a shorter shelf life. Ciders and meads were also appreciated, but ale, with its robust flavor and long storage life, was the go-to beverage for most. Rivers and streams, while seemingly pristine, were often conduits for waste, both human and animal. Wells, though safer, could still be contaminated. The consequences of drinking unsafe water were dire: widespread illness, dysentery, and a constant threat to public health. As we mentioned, medieval ale was often referred to as liquid bread, due to its substantial contribution to the daily caloric intake. For laborers engaged in physically demanding work, a steady supply of ale was not just refreshing, it was fuel. It provided the energy needed to plow fields, construct buildings, and perform the myriad tasks that sustained medieval society. The weaker, small ale varieties, with their lower alcohol content, were particularly common, consumed even by children, offering a safe and nourishing alternative to water. In such a world, a safe, readily available alternative was not merely a convenience. It was a matter of survival. And this is where our story begins. The brewing process, even in its most rudimentary medieval form, involved boiling water. I can almost hear you, but surely there were other options. And indeed there were, but what about the, liquid bread? Well, exactly. The social role of ale was equally profound. It was a communal beverage, shared in homes, taverns, and at feasts. Furthermore, ale played a significant role in medieval medicine and religious practices. As the sun set over medieval landscapes, the day's labor done, people gathered in homes. And with that, we wrap up our first chapter of Let's Move on the next chapter, which is about humble ingredients. A medieval feast. A culinary journey through time. Hard water, rich in minerals, would produce a different brew than soft water. Medieval brewers, of course, lacked the scientific understanding of water chemistry, but they instinctively knew that certain water sources yielded better results. This regional variation in water contributed to the unique flavors and styles of ale that emerged across different parts of Europe. The water was typically drawn from local wells, rivers, or springs, and its purity, as we discussed, was paramount, making the boiling process during brewing an unintentional, yet vital, purification step. The mystery of Gruit, nature's flavor palette, but what gave medieval ale its distinctive flavor, its bitterness, and its preserving qualities before the widespread adoption of hops? The answer lies in a mysterious and diverse blend of herbs known as Gruit. For much of the medieval period, hops were either unknown or rarely used in brewing. Instead, brewers relied on a wide array of botanicals, often grown locally or gathered from the wild. The composition of Gruit varied immensely from region to region, and even from brewer to brewer, making each ale a unique reflection of its local flora and the brewer's personal touch. The herbs of flavor and preservation, common Gruit ingredients included yarrow, which imparted a slightly bitter and aromatic quality, bog myrtle, known for its resinous, slightly spicy notes and its preserving properties, and rosemary, which offered a piney, herbaceous aroma. Other herbs like mugwort, ground ivy, and even juniper berries were also employed. These herbs not only contributed to the flavor profile, but also acted as natural preservatives, helping to extend the shelf life of the ale, a crucial factor in an age without refrigeration. The use of Gruit was often regulated, with local lords or monasteries holding monopolies over its sale, making it a significant source of revenue. This control over Gruit also meant a degree of control over the local brewing industry, further intertwining the daily act of brewing with a broader economic and political landscape of the time. A taste of the landscape, unlike hops, which impart a clean, consistent bit. Gruit blends created a far more complex and often unpredictable flavor. Some Gruit ales might have been earthy and herbaceous, others subtly floral, and still others with a hint of spice or even a slightly narcotic effect, depending on the specific herbs used. This diversity meant that medieval ale was a far cry from the standardized beers of today. Each batch was a unique creation, a liquid tapestry woven from the grains of the earth, the water of the land, and the wild, aromatic bounty of nature. The absence of hops for much of the period meant that the flavors were often softer, more subtle, and perhaps, to our modern palates, surprisingly different. It was a taste of the landscape itself, captured in a mug, a gentle reminder of a time when the connection between what was consumed and where it came from was immediate and profound. Today, we're delving into one of the most beloved beverages of the era, medieval. Grain and the art of malting, at the heart of medieval brewing, lay a few humble ingredients, transformed through a process that, while seemingly simple, was imbued with centuries of accumulated wisdom. The primary component, the very soul of the ale, was grain. Barley was the most common choice, prized for its robust flavor and its ability to malt effectively. However, oats, wheat, and even rye were also used, often in combination, depending on regional availability and desired characteristics of the final brew. These grains were not merely thrown into a pot. They first underwent a crucial transformation known as malting. Was a delicate dance with nature, a process that unlocked the sugars within the grain, making them accessible for fermentation. It began with steeping the grains in water, allowing them to absorb moisture and begin to sprout. This germination process was carefully controlled. The grains were then spread out on a malting floor, turned regularly to prevent mold, and allowed to sprout just enough to convert their starches into fermentable sugars. The sprouts were then halted by drying the grains, often gently over a fire or in a kiln. This drying process not only preserved the malt, but also imparted subtle flavors, ranging from light and biscuity to darker, more roasted notes, depending on the intensity of the heat. This malted grain, now rich in sugars, was the foundation upon which the entire brewing process rested. Water, the variable element water, the second essential ingredient, was as varied as the landscapes from which it was drawn. Let's discuss about the brewing process. From mash to fermentation, the sacred space of the brewhouse, with the malted grain prepared and the water drawn, the medieval brewing process could begin. It was a labor-intensive, yet rhythmic, undertaking, often performed by women in the household or by specialized brewers in monasteries and larger estates. The brewhouse itself was a place of quiet industry and warmth, filled with large wooden tubs, stone hearths with cauldrons, and the simple tools that would transform raw ingredients into liquid sustenance. The malted grains, carefully dried and turned by the sun's golden rays, were now ready to be crushed, releasing their sweet potential and breathed new life into the water. This was no gentle simmer. This cooling process was often done in large, shallow vessels, exposed to the cool air, allowing the heat of the wort to dissipate gradually. Medieval brewers did not understand the role of yeast, but they knew that if they left the cooled wort exposed to the air, or added a small amount of sediment from a previous successful batch, the liquid would begin to bubble and transform. This sediment, containing dormant yeast cells, was the goddess good, a term reflecting the almost miraculous nature of the process. Wild yeasts, naturally present in the air and on the surfaces of the brewing equipment, also played a significant role, contributing to the unique flavor profiles of regional ales. The mystery didn't end there. The fermentation process itself was a puzzle. As the wort was exposed to air, or the goddess good, tiny, invisible organisms sprang to life. They consumed the sugars in the wort, producing alcohol and carbon dioxide as by. This process would typically last for several days, or even a week, depending on the desired strength and style of the ale. But the marvel wasn't just in the transformation of the wort. It was also in the creation of something both familiar and unique. The familiar because it was made with the common ingredients of grain and water. Unique because each batch was influenced by the subtle variations in the environment. The water, the grain, and the yeast, creating a diverse range of ales across the medieval landscape. The carbon dioxide produced during fermentation caused the ale to become naturally carbonated. This, combined with the alcohol content, gave medieval ales their characteristic effect. The result was a beverage that was not only nourishing and sustaining, but also celebratory and communal. The medieval world, with its rhythms of work and feast, found solace and joy in the humble ale, a liquid born from the alchemy of nature and human touch. In some cases, cold water might be circulated around the vessels, or the wort might be transferred to a cooler location, such as a cellar. Rapid cooling was important to prevent the growth of unwanted microorganisms, though medieval brewers understood this through practical experience, rather than scientific knowledge. While the wort cooled, the brewer would prepare the next batch of ale or tend to other tasks, knowing that the cooling process would take time. Once the wort had cooled to an appropriate temperature, typically around room temperature, it was ready for the final magical transformation, fermentation. The wort, bubbling vigorously in the cauldron, sent plumes of sweet steam into the air, carrying with it the promise of the ale to come. The heat, intense and immediate, served several vital purposes. Firstly, It sterilized the liquid, driving out unwanted bacteria and wild yeasts that could spoil the ale. Secondly, it concentrated the sugars, contributing to the final strength and body of the brew. And most importantly, it was during the boil that the gruit, a blend of bitter herbs and flowers, was added. The gruit, typically consisting of bitter herbs like yarrow and wormwood, along with aromatic plants like rosemary and sage, was boiled with a wort for a specific period, infusing its flavors, aromas, and preservative qualities into the liquid. The length of the boil, often lasting for an hour or more, was a critical factor in shaping the final character of the ale, determining its bitterness, its herbal notes, and its overall balance. The aroma wafting from the boiling wort, a complex blend of sweet malt and earthy herbs, would have filled the brewhouse, a comforting and familiar scent of creation. During the boil, the brewer was attentive, not merely a spectator, but an active participant. They adjusted the heat, ensuring a steady, vigorous boil. They watched for signs of impurities, and they added the gruit at the right moment, drawing upon a lifetime of experience and intuition. It was during this phase that the very essence of the ale was defined, its strength, its flavor, and its resilience. The brewhouse, filled with the rhythmic roar of the boil and the brewer's quiet, focused movements, became a crucible of transformation, where basic ingredients evolved into a cherished beverage. The grain, often barley, was crushed, slowly, deliberately, its husk yielding to the weight of the pestle, and mortar saw the crushing rollers of the mill. The sound of grinding grain echoed softly in the brewhouse, a steady rhythm accompanying the rhythmic stirring of the mash tun. The crushed malt, known as grist, was then meticulously mixed with hot water in a large wooden vessel called a mash tun. The grist, still warm from the previous day's drying, was added gradually to the water, a steady stream of crushed grain merging with the liquid. The temperature of the water, vital for awakening the sleeping enzymes within the malt, was judged not by thermometer, but by touch and feel, a legacy of centuries of intuition and experience passed down through generations of brewers. This warm mixture, known as the mash, was then stirred patiently, allowing the enzymes in the malt to break down the remaining starches into fermentable sugars. This process, occurring at temperatures between 60 and 70 degrees Celsius, was the heart of the brewing process. It was during this stage that the dry, lifeless grain yielded its sugary essence, transforming into a sweet liquid known as wort. The mashing process was often a long one, a dialogue between the brewer and the grain, lasting for several hours. The brewer, attuned to the gradual evolution of the mash, would stir regularly, ensuring an even conversion of starches, judging the readiness of the mash by sight and feel, by the gradual thinning and sweetening of the wort. When the conversion was deemed complete, the sweet wort was drained from the mash tun, leaving behind the spent grains. But these were not discarded. Instead, they were often used as animal feed, or even incorporated into bread, a testament to the medieval ethos of waste, not. The clear golden wort, now free from the solid grain, was ready for the next phase of its transformation. In the heart of the medieval home or establishment, the brewhouse was often a distinct space within a larger kitchen or domestic area. It was here, amidst the aromas of roasting meat and baking bread, that the magic of ale production unfolded. The brewhouse, typically a small, thick-walled room, provided the necessary seclusion and controlled environment for the delicate art of brewing. Its sturdy oak table, scarred and worn from years of use, was the primary workspace, holding the essential tools of the brewer's trade. Simple wooden mallets and pestles, used to crush and grind the grain, rested beside a heavy sack of grist, the crushed malt ready to be transformed into sweet wort. Large copper or iron cauldrons hung over the hearth, waiting to receive the crushed grain and boiling water, while nearby, large wooden vessels like the fouders or tuns stood ready to collect the finished product, the rich, golden ale. Windows, often small and high, allowed precious light into the space, casting long shadows as the brewer worked, their face illuminated by the flickering hearth fire. Above the table, a heavy wooden spoon hung, a silent sentinel marking the passage of time and the rhythm of each batch. On the floor, sacks of grain and herbs lay stacked, their contents whispering tales of distant farms and fields. A ladder leaned against the wall, hinting at the task ahead, the careful transfer of the finished ale into storage barrels. In this intimate space, the transformation of simple ingredients into a beloved beverage took place, bringing life, warmth, and community to the medieval world. The first transformation, mashing, as the medieval sun climbed higher in the sky, illuminating the darkest fields outside. The brewer began the first transformation of the brewing process: mashing, boiling, sterilization, and flavor. Next, the wort was transferred to a large cauldron, where it was heated to a rolling boil, cooling and preparation for fermentation. Once the gruel had been boiled for the required length of time, the next step was cooling the hot wort quickly to a temperature suitable for fermentation. The mystery of fermentation. Fermentation was the most mysterious and transformative step in the brewing process. The aleweaves, women at the heart of brewing, while the ingredients and process of medieval brewing were fundamental. The story of ale is incomplete without acknowledging the hands that crafted it. Monastic communities, with their emphasis on self-sufficiency and hospitality, became centers of brewing excellence. Monks brewed not only for their own consumption but also for pilgrims, travelers, and the surrounding communities. Their disciplined approach, access to resources, and often superior knowledge of agricultural practices allowed them to produce high-quality and consistent ales. Many monastic breweries became renowned for their brews, and some of the techniques and traditions developed within monastery walls continue to influence brewing to this day. Liquid bread and spiritual sustenance. Monastic brewing was often driven by practical necessity. During periods of fasting, when solid food was restricted, ale, particularly the more nutritious varieties, provided essential sustenance. It was considered liquid bread, a permissible form of nourishment. The monastic commitment to cleanliness and order also contributed to the quality of their brews, as sanitation, though not understood scientifically, was instinctively practiced. The quiet, contemplative life of the monastic, combined with a rhythmic process of brewing, created an environment where the art of ale-making could flourish, contributing to both the physical well-being and the spiritual life of the community. Innovation and knowledge preservation. Beyond sustenance and hospitality, monastic breweries often became centers of innovation and knowledge. Monks, with their literacy and access to texts, were able to record and refine brewing techniques. Their disciplined approach to production, combined with their long-term perspective, allowed for experimentation and the gradual improvement of brewing processes. They understood the importance of cleanliness, even without a scientific understanding of microbiology, instinctively practicing sanitation that led to more consistent and higher quality brews. Many monasteries also cultivated their own grains and herbs, giving them direct control over the quality of their ingredients. The early adoption of hops. While Gruit was prevalent, some monastic brewers, particularly in regions closer to the Low Countries, recognized the superior preservative qualities of hops. Their adoption of hops, often alongside traditional Gruit, contributed to the gradual spread of hopped beer across Europe. The meticulous record-keeping of monastic scribes provides invaluable insights into the evolution of brewing practices, offering a window into a world where brewing was both an art and a science, albeit an empirical one. Economic impact and lasting legacy. The sheer scale of some monastic brewing operations was also remarkable. Large monasteries could produce vast quantities of ale, not only for their own needs but also for sale, making brewing a significant source of income. This revenue supported the monastery's charitable works, its upkeep, and its scholarly pursuits. The economic impact of monastic breweries was considerable, contributing to local economies, and sometimes even influencing regional trade networks. The image of the brewery monk became synonymous with quality and tradition, a testament to their dedication and skill. Even today, the legacy of monastic brewing endures. Many modern breweries, particularly those producing traditional Belgian and German styles, trace their lineage back to monastic traditions. The Trappist breweries, for instance, continue to produce world-renowned beers, adhering to strict rules that reflect their monastic origins. This enduring legacy is a testament to the profound impact of medieval monks on the art and science of brewing. In their quiet, contemplative lives, they perfected a craft that nourished bodies, sustained communities, and left an indelible mark on the history of human civilization, a gentle, bubbling testament to their enduring influence. For much of the early and high Middle Ages, brewing was predominantly a domestic activity, and the primary brewers were women. These women, often known as alewives or brewsters, were responsible for providing their households with this essential beverage. Brewing was considered a natural extension of their domestic duties, akin to baking bread or preparing meals. It was a skill passed down through generations, from mother to daughter, a vital part of household economy and sustenance. Commercial brewing and economic independence. Alewives were not just brewing for their families. Many also brewed commercially, selling their surplus ale to neighbors and travelers. Their homes often doubled as informal ale, marked by a ale stake or bush hung outside to indicate that fresh ale was available. This entrepreneurial spirit allowed many women, particularly widows, a degree of economic independence in a society where opportunities for women were often limited. They were respected members of their communities, providing a vital service and contributing significantly to the local economy. The image of the alewife, with her brewing equipment and her welcoming sign, was a familiar and comforting sight in medieval towns and villages. The rise of more dominated guilds, however, as the medieval period progressed, and brewing transitioned from a purely domestic activity to a more organized industry, the role of women began to diminish. The rise of professional male brewers, often organized into powerful guilds, gradually pushed women out of the commercial brewing sphere. These guilds, seeking to control the quality and production of ale, often imposed regulations and fees that made it difficult for smaller domestic brewers, particularly women, to compete. The increasing scale of brewing operations, requiring larger equipment and more capital, also favored male entrepreneurs. This shift was a slow, almost imperceptible tide, gradually reshaping the gender dynamics of the brewing world. It provided sustenance, economic opportunities, and a sense of community. During a time when diets were often scarce and unbalanced, ale offered a calorie-rich alternative, providing a valuable source of nutrition, particularly for those in lower socioeconomic classes. Its high carbohydrate content helped sustain laborers, farmers, and craftsmen through long hours of work. Furthermore, the brewing process itself provided economic opportunities, particularly for women. The role of the brewing beer at home for personal use and sometimes for small-scale commercial purposes gave women a degree of financial independence. Owning a brewery, though more uncommon, could be a lucrative business venture, offering a path to prosperity. But perhaps the most significant aspect of ale consumption in medieval Europe was its role in social life. Ale was more than a beverage. It was a lubricant of social interactions, fostering a sense of community and belonging. In homes, it accompanied family meals, while in public houses and inns, it facilitated the exchange of news, ideas, and experiences. During religious festivals and communal gatherings, ale flowed freely, uniting people in shared merriment and celebration. It was a drink that transcended social boundaries, enjoyed by kings and paupers alike. The popularity of ale in medieval Europe was not merely a product of its practicality or affordability. It was a reflection of its deep integration into the social, economic, and cultural fabric of the times. In a world of uncertainties, ale offered a comforting constant, a beverage that nourished the body, the mind, and the spirit. The basic ingredients and process remained unchanged for centuries, reflecting a tradition deeply ingrained in society. At the heart of this tradition were the humble ingredients: water, barley, wheat, and in later centuries, hops. While the quality of these ingredients varied based on geography and season, they formed the backbone of medieval brewing. Water, often sourced from nearby springs or rivers, was a crucial component, affecting both the taste and the safety of the final product. Barley, with its rich starch content, was the dominant grain, chosen for its ability to create a substantial, nourishing beverage. Wheat, used in combination with barley, contributed to the body and texture of the ale. And then there was hops, a relatively late addition to the brewing process, known for its antiseptic properties and its ability to enhance the preservation of ale. These ingredients came together in a process that was both labor-intensive and precise. The process began with the careful preparation of the grains, which were malted, crushed, and then steeped in warm water, initiating the conversion of starches into fermentable sugars. This sugary liquid, known as wort, was then boiled, spiced, and fermented, a process that transformed it into the familiar alcoholic beverage. Throughout this process, temperature, timing, and technique played crucial roles, demanding a brewer's intuition and experience. The result, a beverage that was not merely drinkable, but integral to daily life, a source of hydration, nutrition, and social cohesion. The art of medieval brewing methods. Tradition and technique. The medieval period in Europe, spanning roughly from the 5th to the 15th century, was a time of significant change and upheaval. The motive behind medieval brewing, from sustenance to social cohesion. As we delve deeper into the medieval era, it's essential to understand the multifaceted reasons behind the widespread consumption of ale. Now let's look at medieval brewing through the eyes of different actors and explore how their perspectives shaped this age-old practice. Monastic brewing, centers of excellence alongside the alewives. Another significant force in medieval brewing was the So far we've delved into the ingredients and production of medieval ale. Now it's time to raise our mugs to a toast. What did this historic beverage actually taste like? In the common hall, villagers are gathered, sharing stories and laughter over mugs of ale. Each swallow is a unique blend of flavors, a testament to the diversity of nature's bounty. The absence of hops may seem strange to our modern palates, but it allowed for a broader spectrum of tastes to flourish. There was no single dominant flavor, but a harmonious balance between the malt, the gruel, and the vessel. The taste of medieval ale was earthy, robust, and full-bodied. It was a taste that told a story of the land, the season, and the aroma of freshly baked bread mingling with the earthy scent of the tavern, creating a cozy atmosphere that invites relaxation and camaraderie. Their beverages were meant to be quaffed in large quantities, to quench thirst and provide a sense of well-being. But when we pause to consider it, we discover a world of flavors that were integral to daily life. It was a taste that sustained communities, a taste that told the story of the land, and a taste that echoed the rhythm of a bygone era. While today we might analyze the complexities of a brew, medieval drinkers appreciated its ability to refresh and nourish. But what exactly did this medieval ale taste like? How did it contribute to the social and sensory experience of the times? The year is 1300, and you've just arrived in a medieval village in Europe. Until then, may your days be merry and your ale, however you choose to drink it, always refreshing. Hops, with their distinctive bitterness and aroma, are largely absent from medieval brewing. Without hops, the flavor profile of ale was significantly different. Its taste was dominated by the malt, and the gruit, a mixture of herbs and spices, played a crucial role in not only preserving the ale, but also in shaping its taste and aroma. Different herbs added different notes. For example, yarrow might have lent a slightly astringent, herbal note, while bog myrtle contributed a spicy character. Other herbs might have imparted more subtle flavors, hints of earth, forest, or even a faint sweetness. The exact composition of the gruit varied widely depending on local availability and the brewer's preference, resulting in a diverse range of flavors from batch to batch. This lack of standardization meant that each mug of ale was not just a beverage, but a taste of the landscape itself, a liquid embodiment of the local flora. As we've discussed, the most significant difference between medieval ale and modern beer lies in the use of hops. Wooden mugs, earthenware jugs, and leather tankards would have imparted their own subtle flavors to the ale, adding another layer of complexity to its taste. Moreover, the communal nature of drinking, with villagers often sharing vessels, meant that the act of consuming ale was a shared experience. It wasn't just about the taste in your mug, but the taste of community, the connection that came from sharing a drink with your neighbors. The taste of medieval ale was also influenced by the vessels in which it was served. Imagine sipping from a wooden mug, the cool ale soothing your throat. The medieval world was not a time when people sought subtle, nuanced flavors. In the grand tapestry of history, the taste of medieval ale might seem like a small thread. Each region had its own gruit, its own brewing secrets, passed down through generations, creating a patchwork of local variations. Their compact form allowed for easier transportation and storage, making them ideal for long-distance trade. Moreover, their bitter, astringent qualities enabled brewers to create a more stable product, one that could withstand the rigors of travel and remain fresh for longer periods. As a result, hopped beer became the beverage of choice for travelers and merchants, solidifying hops' importance in the burgeoning commercial sphere. But like all aspects of medieval life, this regional diversity played out against a backdrop of wider changes, political, economic, and yes, even ecological. The shift away from traditional gruits led to discontent among some brewers, who saw the change as a threat to their livelihoods and their traditions. The increased shelf life, the ease of transport, and the potential for greater profit margins made hops an attractive option for brewers. Slowly but surely, hops began to dominate, supplanting the once ubiquitous gruit. By the end of the medieval period, the winds of change had carried hops across Europe, transforming the very definition of beer. The stage was set for the early modern period when hops would become the definitive bittering agent, giving rise to a new era in brewing and profoundly impacting the social, economic, and even linguistic landscapes of medieval Europe. In many regions, local authorities or religious institutions controlled the supply of gruits, ensuring a steady income and a sense of community control over brewing practices. The rise of hops, with its emphasis on individual brewers and market forces, challenged this existing order. The tension between traditionalists and innovators was palpable, leading to disputes and even legal battles over the use of hops. These conflicts were not merely about brewing techniques or personal gain. They were, at their core, about power, tradition, and the ever-evolving dynamics of medieval society. The resistance to hops highlights the deeply ingrained nature of traditional brewing methods. For many, brewing was more than a profession. It was a way of life, bound up in local customs, religious practices, and the social fabric of their communities. The late medieval period witnessed the beginnings of a quiet revolution, a change so subtle at first that it went almost unnoticed, but whose consequences would eventually be profound. This was the increasing use of hops. Hops, the dried flowers of the hop plant, had been known in Europe since Roman times. Initially, they were valued for their medicinal qualities, used to treat ailments ranging from insomnia to skin conditions. But in the shadowy world of medieval pharmacology, the line between medicine and magic was often blurred. Hops, with their earthy, bitter flavor and strong aroma, became associated with witchcraft and pagan rituals. In folklore, they were said to enhance the powers of spells and incantations, adding an air of mystery and intrigue to their usage. This perception of hops as something unusual, even sinister, is reflected in the art and literature of the time. Medieval paintings and engravings often depict witches gathering hops alongside otherworldly ingredients, further cementing their connection to the occult. Literary works, too, allude to the use of hops in spells and curses, weaving them into the fabric of magical narrative. This folkloric backdrop added a layer of complexity to the adoption of hops as a brewing ingredient. While their use in folk magic may seem at odds with their later association with purity and cleanliness, this seemingly contradictory view actually reflects the multifaceted role they played in medieval society. They were both a conduit to the supernatural and a tool for preserving the mundane, a potent symbol of the medieval worldview where the boundaries between the natural and the mystical were far less rigid than our own. But as the late medieval period wore on, another aspect of hops came to the fore: their economic potential. This growing demand for hopped beer did not come without its challenges. Over time, however, the advantages of hops became undeniable. While domestic brewing was widespread and commercial brewing grew with the rise of guilds, a unique and profoundly influential chapter in the history of medieval brewing unfolded within the quiet walls of monasteries. Monastic communities, with their emphasis on self-sufficiency, hospitality, and often advanced agricultural practices, became true centers of brewing excellence. Monks, bound by vows of poverty and often living in remote locations, needed to produce their own food and drink. Ale, as we've discussed, was a vital source of calories and hydration, particularly during periods of fasting when solid food was restricted. Monks, with their literacy and access to texts, were able to record and refine brewing techniques. While Gruit was prevalent, some monastic brewers, particularly in regions closer to the Low Countries, recognized the superior preservative qualities of hops. The Trappist breweries, for instance, continue to produce world-renowned beers, adhering to strict rules that reflect their monastic origins. This enduring legacy is a testament to the profound impact of medieval monks on the art and science of brewing. In their quiet, contemplative lives, they perfected a craft that nourished bodies, sustained communities. How did the practices and innovations of medieval monastic breweries influence brewing in the centuries that followed? Are there any modern breweries or brewing traditions that can trace their roots back to monastic brewing? How did the end of the Middle Ages and the rise of modernism affect monastic brewing and its legacy and cultural context that made this era a pivotal moment in the evolution of beer and left an indelible mark on the history of human civilization? A gentle, bubbling testament to their enduring influence. Their adoption of hops, often alongside traditional Gruit, contributed to the gradual spread of hopped beer across Europe. The meticulous record-keeping of monastic scribes provides invaluable insights into the evaluation of brewing practices, offering a window into a world where brewing was both an art and a science, albeit an empirical one. Their disciplined approach to production, combined with their long-term perspective, allowed for experimentation and the gradual improvement of brewing processes. They understood the importance of cleanliness, even without a scientific understanding of microbiology, instinctively practicing sanitation that led to more consistent and higher quality brews. Large monasteries could produce vast quantities of ale, not only for their own needs, but also for sale, making brewing a significant source of income. This revenue supported the monastery's charitable works, its upkeep, and its scholarly pursuits. The economic impact of monastic breweries was considerable, contributing to local economies and sometimes even influencing regional trade networks. The image of the brewery monk became synonymous with quality and tradition, a testament to their dedication and skill. Many monasteries also cultivated their own grains and herbs, giving them direct control over the quality of their ingredients. And how did these methods compare to their secular counterparts? What innovations did monastic brewers introduce or refine? And how did these innovations impact the broader brewing industry? We'll also explore the recipes and styles of beer favored by monastic brewers. Were there particular recipes or styles associated with certain monasteries or orders? Did monastic brewing contribute to the development of any iconic beer styles? It was considered liquid bread, a permissible form of nourishment that allowed them to maintain their strength and focus on their spiritual duties. The ability to brew their own ale ensured a reliable and safe supply of drink for the community. Their legacy extends far beyond the Middle Ages, influencing brewing traditions that persist to this day. A well-stocked brewhouse was essential for fulfilling this charitable duty. Providing good quality ale to guests was a sign of generosity and welcome, contributing to the monastery's reputation and its ability to serve its wider community. The brewing of ale was thus intertwined with the very mission of the monastic orders, a practical expression of their spiritual values. The reasons for monastic involvement in brewing were multifaceted. Firstly, and perhaps most practically, it was a matter of sustenance. Secondly, hospitality was a cornerstone of monastic life. Monasteries served as havens for travelers, pilgrims, and the poor, offering shelter, food, and drink. Beyond sustenance and hospitality, monastic breweries often became centers of innovation and knowledge. It was within monastic walls that some of the earliest uses of hops in brewing were documented. Even today, the legacy of monastic brewing endures. Many modern breweries, particularly those producing traditional Belgian and German styles, trace their lineage back to monastic traditions. Monasteries weren't just places of worship and study, they were often economic powerhouses. In the medieval period, ale wasn't just a beverage, it was a way of life. It offered more than just a means to quench one's thirst or to get drunk. Here, men of different social classes would come together to enjoy a pint, discuss the latest news, and forge new friendships. For the weary traveler, the tavern was a sanctuary, a place to swap stories and perhaps even find lodging for the night. It was an integral part of daily life, consumed before, during, and after a hard day's work. When a traveler arrived at a village, he might be offered a flagon of ale by the local villagers as a gesture of welcome, and when a lord invited a guest to his hall, they would be served the finest mead and ale the kingdom could offer. Weddings, a time of great joy and merriment, were often lubricated by copious amounts of ale, and festivals honoring saints, the Virgin Mary, or even the changing seasons, were all occasions for feasting and drinking. In these moments, ale enhanced the conviviality and helped create lasting memories of communal celebration. A morning ale, often small and served with breakfast, was a common sight. From the small village churches to the great cathedrals, ale was an important part of many religious rituals. It was used in the celebration of the Eucharist, where wine was mixed with water and given to the congregation as a symbol of Christ's blood. During harvest festivals, special ales were brewed to honor the saints, and church ales were held to raise funds for building projects and other charitable causes. In homes across the medieval world, it was a way to start the day with a sense of ritual and routine. Similarly, midday and evening meals were almost always accompanied by a mug of ale, a drink that could enhance the flavors of even the simplest fare. It was more than just a drink. It was a social lubricant, a community builder, and a silent participant in the joys and sorrows of medieval life. As the sun set over another day, the people of medieval Europe would gather in the warm glow of the tavern or the soft light of their homes, sharing stories and laughter over a mug of ale, their voices echoing with a contentment that only a simple, well-brewed beverage could bring. In a time when water was often unsafe to drink, ale provided a safer, more palatable alternative. Its subtle alcoholic content also made it a favored choice over water for many adults. These establishments were usually simple affairs, with long wooden tables and benches taking up most of the space. The air would be filled with the aromas of stale waste and chamber pots, mingled with a sense of fresh-tasted ale and wood smoke from the hearth. Despite the sometimes less than savory ambience, it was here that the true spirit of medieval society could be found, a melting pot of peasants, merchants, artisans, and even the occasional noble. Instead, it provided a sense of community, a social lubricant that eased interactions between people from all walks of life. The commoner could joke with the merchant, and the young apprentice could share a pint with an older craftsman. Such familiarity would have been unthinkable in most other public spaces of the time. The alewife, or female innkeeper, played a critical role in this social ecosystem. She wasn't just a businesswoman serving a product. She was a facilitator of community, a keeper of secrets, and a source of local knowledge. Her establishment was as much a home away from home as it was a business. And her sharp wit and keen sense of observation, her a sort of unofficial therapist for the men who frequented her establishment. And at the heart of this social experience was the tavern, or more accurately, the alehouse, for that was where ale was primarily consumed. More than just a place to grab a drink, the alehouse was the medieval equivalent of a social club, a community center, and a public square, all rolled into one. In this social cauldron, social norms were relaxed and inhibitions were lowered. But the social role of ale went beyond the tavern. Ale was more than just a drink. It was a symbol of hospitality, a way of showing respect and building alliances. No discussion of medieval beverages would be complete without mentioning the role of ale in religious ceremonies. The consumption of ale was often accompanied by music, dancing, and games, making it an integral part of medieval celebrations. Through its role in everyday life, religion, and festivities, ale wove itself into the very fabric of medieval society. Ale has been a constant companion to humanity for centuries, and the Middle Ages were no exception. But in the medieval period, ale was more than just a drink. It was a cultural phenomenon that permeated every aspect of life. It accompanied farmers in the fields, craftsmen in their workshops, and nobles in their great halls. Its versatility and robustness made it suitable for a wide range of occasions. At the start of a medieval feast, ale was commonly served as a celebratory drink, a toast to honor guests or commemorate special events. Certain Gruit herbs, believed to possess mystical powers, might have lent a subtle aura of enchantment to the brew. The sharing of ale at feasts and festivals was not just about consumption. It was a symbolic act of unity, of shared prosperity, and of collective well-being. Terms like brewster or alewife were common, indicating the specialized roles of those who crafted the beverage. It was a cultural icon that defined social norms, inspired artistic expression, and sustained communities through centuries of history. From the grand halls of kings to the humble cottages of peasants, ale played a pivotal role in shaping medieval life. Understanding the cultural significance of ale provides us with a deeper appreciation for the complexities of medieval society and the enduring impact of this ancient beverage on human culture. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe and tune in for more tales from the past. Until then, stay thirsty, my friends, and may your ales be ever in good supply. The very word ale itself carried a weight of tradition and familiarity, evoking images of warmth, comfort, and conviviality. It was a word that resonated with the rhythms of daily life, a sound that was as comforting and familiar as the gentle bubbling of fermentation. The communal mug, passed from hand to hand, represented the interconnectedness of the community, a liquid bond that strengthened social ties. In some religious contexts, ale might have been blessed, further imbuing it with spiritual significance, connecting the earthly act of brewing with the divine. There were beliefs that ale could ward off evil spirits, bring good fortune, or even enhance fertility. These folk beliefs, while not rooted in scientific understanding, reflected the deep reverence and reliance that people placed on this life-sustaining drink. The act of brewing itself could be seen as a form of gentle alchemy, transforming humble ingredients into something vital and sometimes seemingly miraculous. This custom was so ingrained in medieval culture that a failure to provide sufficient quantities of ale at a feast was considered a grave insult. During the feast itself, ale flowed freely, accompanying the meal and enhancing the sense of camaraderie and merriment. The medieval concept of a feast wasn't just about the food. It was about the atmosphere of celebration and togetherness that ale helped to create. Now we're going to look at what happened after the ale was made. how it was consumed, and how it impacted medieval culture. Medieval ale was an integral part of daily life for people of all social classes. But ale wasn't just for grand occasions. It played a vital role in everyday life as well, for laborers and villagers. It was a refreshing drink that helped them quench their thirst and sustain their energy during long days of work. In the evenings, ale became a part of relaxation and socializing. Men and women gathered in taverns and alehouses, sharing stories and laughter over a mug of their favorite brew. These establishments weren't just places to consume ale. They were social hubs where news was exchanged, deals were made, and friendships were forged. Ale also had a significant presence in medieval folklore and literature. It was more than just a drink. It was a symbol, a metaphor, and a source of inspiration for stories and beliefs that reflected the deep connection between humanity and this essential beverage. Proverbs and common sayings often incorporated ale, reflecting its everyday importance. Phrases like, "Good ale makes a merry heart," or "as keen as mustard, as mild as ale" would have been common, illustrating the beverage's association with good cheer, moderation, and the simple pleasures of life. Ale was also frequently mentioned in medieval literature, from the epic poems to the more mundane accounts of daily life. Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, for instance, offers glimpses into the drinking habits of various characters, further cementing ale's place in the literary imagination of the era. In some regions, ale was even associated with magical or protective properties. The symbolism of ale also extended to its role in communal rituals and celebrations. Even the language used to describe ale reflected its importance. With the introduction of new ingredients and techniques, medieval brewers experimented with a wide variety of recipes, creating ales that were both diverse and innovative. The medieval period, a time of great change and upheaval, also witnessed significant transformations in the art of brewing. As we delve into the heart of medieval brewing, we'll uncover the secrets behind the beloved recipes of the time. Picture a bustling medieval village square with merchants and travelers from distant lands bringing exotic spices and fruits to trade. Another intriguing addition was the spice known as ginger, originating from Asia, which brewers used to create warming and aromatic ales, perfect for the chilly winter months. Their ability to transform humble ingredients into a beloved community staple is a testament to their skill and ingenuity. From the bustling village squares to the cozy taverns, the legacy of medieval brewing continues to captivate our imagination, reminding us of a time when a simple brew could bring people together and sustain them through the challenges of daily life. These goods not only added new flavors to local brews, but also symbolized the interconnectedness of medieval Europe. These robust brews became popular among merchants and travelers, providing them with a reliable source of refreshment on their journeys. It was often driven by a necessity. During the medieval period, water was not always safe to drink, and brewing, with its natural filtration process, provided a safer alternative. Additionally, the preservation qualities of spices and fruits allowed the beer to last longer, ensuring a steady supply of safe drinking water during times when fresh water sources could be scarce. One notable example is the use of coriander, a spice native to Egypt and India, which found its way into German ales, lending them a distinctive citrusy aroma and flavor. But the influence of faraway lands didn't end there. Fruits such as cranberries, blueberries, and even apples made their way into medieval brewing, adding a touch of sweetness and tartness to the ales. These fruits, readily available in the local landscape, were not only delicious, but also had preservative qualities, extending the shelf life of the beer. The medieval period also saw the rise of strong ales, brewed with a higher concentration of sugar and spices, which could be stored for longer periods and transported over greater distances. However, the use of these ingredients was not merely a whimsical addition to recipes. As we raise our mugs to toast this enduring heritage, let us reflect on how the echoes of bygone eras add depth and richness to our modern world. Modern brewing techniques, backed by scientific understanding and advanced technology, have brought us a wide array of beverages, each with its unique character and charm. There's a delightful curiosity, a yearning to understand and experience the beverages that sustained our ancestors through the ages. The emphasis on local ingredients, the celebration of the brewing process itself, and a sense of community that permeates many craft breweries are all echoes of the medieval ethos. Brewing in the medieval period was more than just a method of creating an alcoholic beverage. It was a way of life, deeply intertwined with the rhythms of nature. The needs of the community, and the skilled hands of the brewer. It was a reminder that sustenance and celebration were not separate from the land and the people, but were integral parts of them. In an era where efficiency and mass production often take center stage, the medieval approach to brewing offers a refreshing perspective. It encourages us to slow down, to appreciate the subtleties of flavor, and to recognize the value of human touch in crafting our food and drink. Just as medieval ale was a reflection of the local landscape and the hands that made it, so do many modern craft beers tell stories of their origin and their makers. May their spirit continue to inspire us to innovate, to preserve tradition, and to find joy in the simple pleasure of a well-crafted beer. As we savor the flavors of the past and the present, let us also be mindful of the responsibility that comes with preserving such a rich heritage. The medieval alehouse wasn't just a place to get a drink, it was a social hub, a place where people gathered to connect and share stories, and in many ways, the taproom has reclaimed this role, becoming a gathering place where friends meet, families create memories, and the community bonds over a shared love of fine brews. In this sense, the medieval brewing tradition continues to thrive in the connections it fosters, reminding us that a good beer is more than just a beverage. It's a catalyst for human connection. This fascination has given rise to a new generation of brewers, who are not merely concocting familiar brews, but are venturing into the realm of the past. They are unearthing ancient grains, rediscovering forgotten fruit blends, and attempting to recreate medieval ales as a tribute to their historic roots. It is a testament to the cyclical nature of trends that what was once old is becoming new again. And this isn't just a fleeting fad, it's a genuine appreciation for the rich legacy that has been handed down to us. These brewers are carrying forward the torch of tradition, ensuring that the essence of medieval brewing lives on in contemporary tastes. From light lagers to robust stouts, the spectrum of flavors and styles is vast and varied, catering to every palate's desire. And yet amidst this evolution there exists a profound respect and appreciation for the foundations laid centuries ago. The world of brewing today is a dynamic tapestry woven with threads of tradition and innovation. As we traverse the realm of contemporary brewing, we encounter a growing interest in historical brewing methods and ingredients. But the spirit of medieval brewing resonates in the present day in more ways than one. As we raise our glasses to toast the enduring legacy of medieval brewing, let us also take a moment to appreciate the timeless lessons it offers. So here's to the masters of the medieval brew, whose legacy lives on in every bottle and every barrel, in the heart of medieval life. Amidst the clatter of the blacksmith's hammer and the murmur of monks in their scriptorium, there existed a silent force that shaped economies, influenced trade, and painted prosperity on the canvas of medieval life. We are talking about ale. More than just a drink, ale was an elixir of commerce, a catalyst of community, and a cornerstone of medieval economic life. It was the very essence of trade, taxation, and prosperity. The medieval period witnessed the rise of a robust ale economy driven by the simple act of brewing. But it was anything but simple. This era marked a significant shift in the production and consumption of beer, laying the groundwork for the modern alcoholic beverage industry. These establishments weren't just drinking halls, they were economic hubs. They offered ale not just for consumption on site, but also for travelers to take with them on their journeys. This practice, coupled with the standardization of ale measures, led to the development of early packaging and transportation methods, further integrating the ale into the fabric of trade. The alehouse was also a hub of economic activity, because it was here that many people, especially farmers, would spend their wages earned from working the land. Monasteries often sold their surplus ale, generating income that funded their operations and supported charitable activities. This commercial aspect of monastic brewing highlighted the economic significance of ale in medieval life. Medieval authorities, from local guilds to royal governments, recognized the importance of ale and sought to capitalize on it. Furthermore, medieval authorities understood the value of quality control. Measures such as the assize of ale, which regulated the strength and quality of ale, were introduced to prevent adulteration and safeguard public health. This mixture of herbs, primarily bitter and aromatic, was essential in enhancing the flavor and preserving ale during a time when refrigeration was unavailable. However, the use of grunts was not without its economic implications. In many regions, the right to sell grunts was a coveted monopoly, granting the holder significant control and revenue streams within the ale economy. Initially used for its bitter flavor and preservative properties, hops gradually replaced grunts in ale production. This shift not only altered the taste of medieval beverages, but also had profound economic implications. Such regulations not only protected consumers, but also fostered trust in the ale supply, a vital component of a thriving economy. Hops could be grown more widely and were not subject to the same monopolistic controls as Gruit. While the world of medieval ale may seem like a distant chapter in history, its economic legacy continues to echo in our modern world. The principles of quality control, taxation, and trade regulation developed in the ale industry laid the groundwork for modern economic practices. The very tools we use to measure and enjoy our drinks today are testaments to the evolution of the ale economy. And who knows, the next time you take a sip, you might just be tasting a bit of medieval history. This democratized brewing to some extent, allowing more brewers to enter the market and reducing the control that traditional authorities had over the industry. Instead, the hop monopoly was quickly born, controlled by landowners who had the capital and the acreage to grow this lucrative crop. By implementing taxes on ale production, sale, and consumption, they tapped into a reliable source of income that fueled public projects, funded wars, and supported administrative functions. By selling their ale, monasteries participated directly in the local economy, interacting with merchants and contributing to the prosperity of nearby towns. From the communal aspect of alehouses to the religious duties of monasteries, from the economic regulations of taxation to the upheaval caused by hops, every aspect tells a story of an era. Moreover, the sale of ale provided a vital link between the spiritual world of the monastery and the everyday lives of their lay brothers and sisters. While this system generated considerable revenue, it also created a barrier to entry for aspiring brewers. The Gruit monopoly serves as a fascinating case study in the intersection of economics, power, and trade. It highlights how a seemingly obscure ingredient could become a focal point of economic control and influence. This injection of currency directly into the local economy stimulated demand for a variety of goods, from food to clothing, thus contributing to a circular flow of money within the community. The alehouse was a microcosm of the broader ale economy. Here, farmers might trade news of market prices while sharing a tankard with a traveling merchant. This exchange of information facilitated trade networks, ensuring that market trends reached even the most remote corners of medieval life. In a period when cash transactions were less common and trade largely operated on a barter system, ale played a unique role. Brewing ale required minimal specialized tools and was adaptable to diverse local ingredients. For monks, brewing ale was both a practical necessity and a duty. It was a safer alternative to water, and its production was integrated into the rhythm of daily life, often tied to religious observances. The scale of monastic brewing was surprisingly large. Some monasteries produced hundreds of gallons of ale annually, driven by the sheer number of monks who required sustenance and the need to sustain travelers who sought their hospitality. This made it a common practice across social strata, from peasants to nobles. And where there is production, there is trade. Additionally, ale was an essential part of medieval diet, making it a consistently high-demand product. Its role as a safer alternative to water further solidified its importance. Thus, the ale economy wasn't just a sideline for many households, it was a lifeline, a liquid foundation on which much of medieval commerce rested. It wasn't just a product exchanged, it was a currency in itself. Brewers, particularly women who dominated the ale brewing industry, exchanged their wares for a variety of goods, from agricultural products to household items. This practice not only facilitated trade, but also served as a rudimentary form of taxation, a concept we'll explore further. The ale economy, a liquid foundation of trade. Let's start with the most fundamental aspect of medieval ale, its role in trade. But why was ale so central to this trade? The answer lies in its production process. Ale houses, where community met commerce at the heart of any bustling medieval town or village. You'd find the ale house, a place where men gathered to drink, socialize, and conduct business. Moreover, ale houses often doubled as inns, providing lodging for travelers who themselves were vital cogs in the ale trading wheel. Monasteries, brewing up economic and religious sustenance. Monasteries were not just secluded religious communities, they were active participants in the medieval economy, and ale played a pivotal role. However, ale production in monasteries was not solely for internal use. Taxation and regulation, keeping the ale flowing for profit and piety in the realm of the ale economy. Taxation and regulation were critical tools for maintaining order, generating revenue, and ensuring quality. These taxes, often collected by officials known as ale tasters or ale conners, ensured that brewers and sellers of ale contributed their share to the common good. The Gruit monopoly, a bittersweet harvest of control and revenue in the pre-modern era. The production of ale was intricately linked to a specific ingredient, gruit. This monopoly, often held by local lords or religious institutions, allowed them to dictate the price of grunts, effectively influencing the cost of production for all ale brewers within their jurisdiction. Hops revolutionizes, bringing new challenges and opportunities. As the medieval period progressed, one of the most significant impacts of hops was the decline of the Gruit monopoly. A legacy of liquid influence. The ale economy in medieval times was more than just a series of transactions. It was a reflection of the ingenuity, adaptation, and resilience of medieval societies. Today, when we raise a glass of ale or beer, we are continuing a tradition that began in medieval times. The medieval world was powerfully influenced by the seasons, which affected everything from what people ate to how they dressed. One area of life strongly impacted by these seasonal shifts was brewing. While we may think of beer as a near year-round beverage today, medieval ale, the precursor to modern beer, followed a distinct brewing calendar tied to the agricultural year. The barley and other grains planted in the spring were flourishing in the fields. The wild herbs and flowers used for flavoring and preservation were also thriving. Months of growth and nurturing culminated in this moment. The success of the harvest directly impacted the brewing year. These harvest ales, or October ales, were celebratory brews. They marked the end of the harvest season. While outdoor activities slowed, there was still much to do within the cozy confines of the brewhouse. The cold temperatures made it more difficult to achieve the vigorous fermentation necessary for strong ales, so brewers often turned to lighter recipes that were easier to manage in the winter months. Despite the challenges posed by the cold weather, these winter ales were still important. It was a way of life. It was a reflection of the deep connection between human activity and the natural world. The seasonal rhythm of brewing provided structure and meaning to the year. It marked the passage of time through the changing flavors and ingredients used in each season's ales. It wove together the lives of the brewers and their communities, connecting them to the cycles of growth, harvest, and renewal that governed all life. The medieval brewing calendar serves as a reminder of the wisdom in working with nature's rhythms rather than against them, and it offers a glimpse into a world where every season had its own unique contribution to the art of brewing. They provided a consistent supply of safe, drinkable beer throughout the year, especially during the times when fresh brews were harder to come by. In many ways, winter was about holding steady, maintaining the progress made during the warmer months, and ensuring that the brewing year didn't end on a sour note. It was a time for brewers to reflect on the past year, learn from their successes and failures, and make plans for the year ahead. The ales brewed in the previous months were now maturing. They were in the process of developing the complex flavors and characteristics that made them so prized. But this was a time that required patience. The cold weather slowed fermentation, making it more challenging to maintain the right conditions for continued healthy fermentation. This meant that brewers had to be attentive, monitoring their brews closely and making adjustments as needed, and were a tribute to the hard work that had gone into securing the year's food supply. These ales were brewed with the finest grain from the recent harvest, and were often aged for months, sometimes years, to develop their complex flavors. Festivals, religious holidays, weddings, and other significant events often featured unique ales that were specially crafted to mark the occasion. These special brews might use rare or expensive ingredients or might be aged in unique ways to create one-of-a-kind flavors. For example, a wedding ale might be brewed with spices like ginger and cinnamon, while an ale brewed for a religious festival might incorporate ingredients associated with the holiday's traditions. These special ales weren't just beverages. They were integral to the festivities, adding to the celebratory atmosphere and creating lasting memories. The cooler temperatures of autumn created the perfect environment for these robust ales. They could be fermented without the risk of overheating, and the longer nights provided the time needed for careful monitoring and adjustment that these strong ales demanded. This was also a time when brewers experimented with their recipes, often adding spices or other ingredients to create unique brews that celebrated the season. These autumn ales weren't just beverages. They were a testament to the hard work and dedication of the brewing community. They were a vital part of the social fabric of medieval life, bringing people together to celebrate the bounty of the harvest and the promise of the year ahead. A bountiful harvest meant ample grain for malting and brewing, promising a year of plenty. A poor harvest, on the other hand, meant that supplies would be limited and brewers would have to carefully ration their ingredients. The harvest was a community event, It was a time when neighbors came together to bring in the grain. Once the grain was harvested, it was then threshed and dried. Some of this grain was immediately set aside for malting, the process of converting grain into malt, which would be used later in the brewing process. The remaining grain was used for other purposes, such as milling into flour for baking bread. This was the perfect time foragers to gather these ingredients for the year's brewing. The timing of these gatherings was crucial. Plants had to be picked at the height of their growth, when their essential oils were most potent and their flavors were at their peak. Gathering herbs wasn't merely a matter of plucking a few leaves. It was a carefully orchestrated dance with nature. It required an intimate knowledge of the plants, an understanding of when they should be picked, and a respect for the delicate balance of the ecosystem. This knowledge was often passed down through generations, becoming a vital part of local lore and culture. Spring a time for preparation and planting, while winter was a time of rest for brewers. Spring signaled the start of a new brewing year. The warm weather made fermentation more active and less controllable. Strong ales were harder to manage during these months, so brewers opted for lighter, more delicate brews that could better withstand the heat. These summer ales were refreshing and designed to quench the thirst brought on by the summer heat. They were perfect for quenching the thirst of farm workers toiling in the fields or townspeople going about their daily activities. But while these light ales were perfect for immediate consumption, they weren't suitable for aging. They lacked the robustness and complexity that allowed ales to be stored for months on end. And so, despite the abundance provided by a hopefully fruitful harvest, many brewers held off on large batches until the cooler temperatures of the year provided a more favorable environment for creating long-lasting brews. The harsh grip of winter was loosening its hold and the promise of warmer days was in the air. For brewers, this season was all about preparation. But crucially, the grains that would be used for malting and brewing later in the year had to be planted as well. Barley was the most common grain used for brewing, but other grains like oats and wheat might also make an appearance depending on local availability and the brewer's preference. The quality of these spring plantings directly affected the brewing year's potential. A good harvest meant a bountiful supply of malt, leading to a year with plenty of high-quality ale. Conversely, a poor spring planting could foreshadow a year of scarcity. The success of the brewing year, in many ways, hinged on the care and attention given to these early spring plantings. After months of rest, their brewing equipment needed tending. Barrels and tubs had to be checked for leaks and damage, and any necessary repairs had to be made. Implements like mashing tools and ladles were cleaned and sharpened to ensure they'd be ready for the tasks ahead. The very places where brewing took place were thoroughly cleaned. Every nook and cranny was scrubbed to remove any remnants of last year's brews and create a pristine space for the coming season. This wasn't just about aesthetics or hygiene. It was a matter of preventing spoilage and ensuring the new brews started with the purest ingredients possible. This cleaning process was so important that it often involved the entire community. In larger operations, this might mean hiring temporary help, but in most cases, it was a communal effort with neighbors and family members pitching in to help get everything ship-shape before the busy brewing season commenced. It wasn't just about readying equipment and facilities. Spring was also the season for planting. Fields had to be prepared and seeds sown. Summer, growth, gathering, and brewing light ales as the days grew longer and the weather warmed. Summer was a time of growth and activity in the brewing calendar. While these preparations were underway, brewing itself was also taking place, though the type of ale being produced was quite different from those brewed in the colder months. Autumn, the season of abundance and strong ales. Autumn was arguably the most important season in the medieval brewing calendar. It was the season of the grain harvest. As the grain harvest drew to a close and the days grew shorter, autumn was the ideal time for brewing the strongest ales of the year. Winter, preservation and patience. Winter, in the medieval world, was a season of rest and preservation. While the primary focus was on preserving the existing brews, winter was also a time for brewing lighter ales. Festival brewing and special occasions throughout the year. Special occasions called for special brews. The brewing calendar and the rhythm of life. In medieval Europe, the brewing calendar wasn't just about producing a beverage. To medieval minds, fermentation was akin to alchemy, as the brew transformed from sugary wort to frothy ale. Invisible agents caused extraordinary changes, turning grain and water into one of humanity's favorite intoxicants. While science has since uncovered the microbial basis of this mysterious process, It has diminished the wonder of how a simple infusion of grains can yield such complex flavors and intoxicating effects. But in the Middle Ages, no one knew this. This was especially prevalent in monasteries, where the purity of the Eucharist was of great importance. Monastic brewers would often cultivate yeast from other sources, ensuring a consistent product. For medieval brewers, fermentation was a delicate dance. Too high or too low temperatures could hinder the yeast's activity. This experimentation led to the creation of distinctive regional styles, each with its unique characteristics and flavor profile. For example, in the mountainous regions of Bavaria, brewers used locally grown wheat to create a style of beer known as Weizenbier or wheat beer. Their techniques, born out of observation, experimentation, and a deep connection to this, laid the foundation for brewing traditions that persist to this day. While science has since illuminated the intricate world of yeast and fermentation, it hasn't diminished the remarkable achievements of medieval brewers. They navigated the complexities of fermentation without scientific guidance, shaping the course of brewing history and leaving behind a legacy of flavor and innovation. These experimental and innovative approaches to brewing not only diversified the range of available beers, but also served as a testament to the adaptability and ingenuity of medieval brewers. Diversification wasn't just about creating new products, it was also a reflection of the dynamic relationship between brewers and their environment. Local ingredients, climate, and brewing traditions all played a part in shaping the character of each beer. This process of adaptation and innovation would later contribute to the emergence of distinct brewing cultures across Europe, each with its own set of ingredients, techniques, and styles. So brewers sought out locations with consistent temperatures for their fermentation process. The quest for stronger, more flavorful ales pushed medieval brewers to experiment with higher sugar concentrations. This practice, however, led to new and more complex problems. Ales were now more susceptible to spoilage from wild yeast and bacteria, introducing unwanted flavors and reducing their shelf life. To counteract this, brewers developed new techniques, including boiling the wort for longer periods, using larger fermentation vessels, and refining their techniques for handling yeast. Each of these innovations was a response to the unique challenges posed by stronger ales, reflecting the constant push and pull between experimentation and tradition in the brewing process. They favored cellars, underground chambers, or cool springs, where temperatures remained relatively stable throughout the year. In warmer climates, they might opt to ferment outdoors in the shade or even suspend their brews in nearby bodies of water to benefit from the cooling effects of evaporation. In colder regions, they might insulate their fermentation vessels or keep them close to hearths or ovens to provide the necessary warmth. This constant attention to detail and readiness to adapt was crucial for managing the challenges of wild yeast fermentation. They kept these cultivated yeasts in a dormant state, ready for use in subsequent brews. This practice, while not widespread among all medieval brewers, represented an early step towards controlling the fermentation process. By using a consistent source of yeast, these brewers reduced the variability introduced by wild yeast, leading to more predictable and reliable fermentation. This approach also allowed them to build up strains of yeast that were well suited to their local conditions and the particular styles of ale they were brewing. Over time, these techniques evolved into more refined methods of yeast cultivation and management, laying the groundwork for modern brewing practices. For medieval brewers, yeast was an enigma, a mysterious force that animated the beer and infused it with alcohol. This approach was suitable for lagers, which undergo a slower, cooler fermentation process. Wild yeast was readily available in the cool air and water of southern Germany, which was ideal for lager production. The use of wild yeast brought its own set of challenges. Brewers had to contend with the unpredictability of wild yeast, the risk of spoilage, and a variation in the quality and strength of their ales. However, it also offered opportunities for innovation and adaptation. As brewers encountered different wild yeast strains, they gained a deeper understanding of fermentation. They learned to recognize the signs of good and bad fermentation, to interpret the subtle changes in the brew, and to adjust their techniques accordingly. For instance, they learned to recognize the ideal consistency of the yeast cake, the layer of yeast that forms on top of the fermenting liquid. A cake that was too thick or too thin could indicate problems with the fermentation process. Similarly, they observed that a healthy fermentation produced a characteristic a type of foam that formed on the surface of the fermenting beer. By understanding these indicators, medieval brewers could anticipate the outcome of the fermentation process and take corrective action if needed. Their observations and understanding of this process were limited, but they developed ingenious ways to harness the power of yeast for brewing. One of the ways medieval brewers worked around their lack of understanding of yeast was to establish a schedule for brewing. Brewing was seasonal, aligning with the harvest cycles of barley and other grains. This practice was dictated partly by the need to use fresh ingredients and avoid spoilage, but also by tradition and experience. Each season brought its own set of challenges, and brewers had to adapt their techniques to the varying qualities of the ingredients and the unique conditions of each season. Spring and early summer were often considered the best times for brewing, offering a balance of temperatures suitable for fermentation without the risk of extreme heat. As the summer progressed and temperatures rose, the risk of spoilage increased, making fermentation more challenging. Autumn was also a popular time for brewing, not only because of favorable temperatures, but also because the harvest had just come in, providing ample supplies of fresh grains. Winter was traditionally a time when brewing was scaled back or halted entirely. Not only were the temperatures often too cold to support active fermentation, but also many communities observed a period of fasting during this season, reducing the demand for alcoholic beverages. These seasonal rhythms weren't just a response to practical concerns, they were also embedded in the social and cultural fabric of medieval life. Brewing was a communal activity, and the timing of brewing was often coordinated with community events, religious holidays, and agricultural cycles. So, while medieval brewers didn't understand yeast, they did understand seasons. They noted that warmer months led to quicker fermentation, which could produce stronger ales. On the flip side, they also recognized that these same warm months posed a higher risk of spoilage came from various sources, including wild yeasts and bacteria competing with cultivated yeasts and introducing unwanted flavors. And while this may seem like a setback, it was through encountering these spoils that brewers began to grasp the nuances of fermentation. By experimenting, they started to identify the parameters that led to desirable outcomes. Gradually, they learned to manipulate the process, selecting yeast strains, adjusting temperatures, and refining techniques to minimize the risk of This iterative process of trial and error, coupled with an intimate knowledge of their environment, enabled them to produce consistent and high-quality ales. But to truly master this art form, we must first understand the unseen forces at play. Welcome to our series where we explore the history, science, and culture of fermentation. Today we look at how medieval brewers coaxed life into their ales and lagos. When we think of medieval brewers, we typically imagine large kettles over open fires, malted barley and unfiltered brews, but let's delve deeper into their most valuable tool, the silent partner that made it all possible. Yeast, a single-celled fungus, is the key player in fermentation, converting sugar into alcohol and carbon dioxide. Another technique they employed was the use of pure or cultivated yeast. While medieval brewers experimented with pure yeast, many, especially those in Germany, continued to use the traditional method of relying on wild yeast. The art of observation extended to every aspect of the brewing process. As medieval brewers gained more confidence in their ability, some took their independence a step further by experimenting with different grains and techniques. But this journey of discovery wasn't without its challenges. By understanding the basics of fermentation, medieval brewers crafted ales that were not only integral to their daily lives, but also unique expressions of their local environments. As the sun sets on another day, casting long shadows across the medieval landscape, we find ourselves at the end of our journey through the gentle art of medieval brewing. It's been a long and winding road, one that has taken us from the fields of barley and hops to the bubbling brew kettles and fermentation vats. For what is an ale without its toasts? What is a medieval adventure without its final feast? So, gather round, dear friends, and let us share in the rich tapestry of toasts that have echoed through the ages. We've met the hard-working alewives, the pious monks, and all the people who played a role in creating this beloved beverage. But now the time has come to raise our mugs one last time and savor the fruits of our labor, or rather the fruits of their labor. For in the quiet moments of contemplation that a mug of ale can bring, we discover the deeper truths of life, the interconnectedness of all things, the importance of community, and the enduring power of tradition. To the ale itself, may its every drop bring forth the strength of the ox, the wisdom of the serpent, the swiftness of the falcon, and the cunning of the fox. To our forefathers, may their bones rest easy in the knowledge that their legacy of brewing lives on through us. To the alewives and brewers, may their skill and patience continue to inspire us, and may their names be written in the stars. For even in the smallest of grains lies the potential for greatness. And who knows, you might just find yourself raising a mug to the stars, celebrating the simple joys of life and the quiet strength that flows within you. And, to the monks of old, may their prayers ascend like the finest mead to the heavens themselves. Until next time, stay curious, stay thirsty, and above all, stay free. And as the final notes of our medieval adventure fade into the twilight, let us not forget the lessons we've learned along the way. So, go forth, my friends, and be not afraid to follow your dreams, no matter how humble they may seem. If you really enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button and don't forget to share it with your friends.